In the worst year of my life, I took $100,000 to impersonate my brother and care for his blind fiancée. The day she regained her sight, I vanished without a word. We met again at a high-profile business forum. I was an obscure intern reporter, while she had reclaimed her status as the powerful heiress of the Sterling family, sitting poised on stage for an interview. "We hear that during your illness, your fiancé, Mr. Vance, was by your side through it all. Wedding bells must be on the horizon." A faint smile played on her lips as she raised her left hand, the ring on her finger glinting in the light. "He and I are getting engaged soon." But her eyes seemed to look right through the camera, landing, as if by chance, on me in the corner. Before the forum began, the room was buzzing. "The woman they're interviewing today, she runs the entire Sterling empire. I heard she went blind 5 years ago, was even cast out by the family. If it wasn't for that movie star fiancé of hers sticking by her, she probably wouldn't have made it." I sat on the sidelines, forcing a professional smile while my nails dug into my palms. Suddenly, my mentor, Mark, turned to me. "Ethan, go grab me a glass of water, my throat's dry." I had just reached the water cooler near the entrance when the main door swung open. A familiar figure came into view, and my mind went completely blank. In 3 years, Emma Sterling had been completely transformed. Her once slender, almost fragile frame was now tall and commanding, her features sharper, exuding a cool elegance. Those eyes, once clouded by a milky haze, were now piercingly clear and cold. Her gaze swept past me as if I were a complete stranger, not lingering for even a second. Flanked by bodyguards, she ascended the stage, a crisp, woody scent trailing in her wake as she passed me. I stood frozen for a few seconds before I could process it. The 2 years I was with her were the absolute lowest point of her life. She was an outcast from the Sterling family, and she was blind. Of course, she had no idea what I looked like. It was better this way. By the time I returned with the water, the forum was underway. Emma sat on stage, fingers steepled beneath her chin, commanding the room with an effortless grace. She was in the middle of answering a question about market strategy when a side door opened and Julian Vance walked in. "Sorry, Emma. Something came up on set. I'm late." He was dressed in a stunning champagne-colored suit and took a seat beside her. The room fell silent for a beat before erupting in a charged, gossipy buzz. Mark leaned over and whispered to me, "You know, you and that movie star look kind of alike." I pursed my lips and managed a weak smile. "He's a major celebrity, Mark. You're giving me too much credit. Of course we looked alike. We were half-brothers, same mother. We hear that during your illness, it was thanks to Mr. Vance's unwavering support that you pulled through. Is a wedding on the horizon?" I watched Emma on stage as she gave a small smile and raised her left hand, revealing her ring finger. On it was a simple silver ring, one I had bought with money from a part-time job years ago, just to see her smile. The prestigious heiress of the Sterling family, wearing such an inexpensive ring, looked completely out of place. She seemed oblivious, her finger tracing the band lightly before she lowered her hand. The microphone was passed to Julian. "Mr. Vance, we hear your latest film is casting a lot of new talent. Did Ms. Sterling's influence play a part in that?" He smiled and admitted it freely. "Of course, I'm confident in my own professional judgment, but I won't deny that Emma has done a great deal for me. And I'd like to think I'm worthy of that support." His charming candor won over the crowd. Another reporter asked, "Could you share a story about how you and Ms. Sterling supported each other through that difficult time?" The smile on Julian's face froze. In the eerie silence that followed, time itself seemed to slow. Then, Emma let out a soft laugh and took the microphone. "There isn't much to tell. The memories we have are ours alone." My eyes suddenly burned. I gripped my pen, lowering my head in a fluster. If I closed my eyes, the memories would come rushing back. As a teenager, Emma had been wild and rebellious, making more than a few enemies. After she lost everything, some of them came looking for payback. I'd been pushed down a flight of stairs protecting her, landing in a bloody heap. The thugs got spooked and scrambled away. Gritting my teeth, I got to my feet and walked back to her, trying to act like nothing happened. "Let's go home." But Emma suddenly grabbed my hand. "You're hurt. We're going to the hospital." "I'm fine. I can smell blood." Her voice cracked, tears spilling from those clouded eyes, like stars dimmed by ash. She threw her arms around me, holding me tight, but the name she whispered was my brother's. "Julian, when I get better, I'm going to marry you in the biggest wedding imaginable." After the forum, the sky had turned a gloomy gray. Outside, Mark patted his pockets. "Damn it, Ethan, I left my memory card inside. Go run back and grab it for me." I jogged back across the damp pavement. The elevator dinged at the ground floor. The door slid open, and I nearly collided with the two people inside, Julian Vance and Emma Sterling. The look on Julian's face turned instantly sour. "Sorry," I mumbled, turning to take the stairs instead. "Stay," Emma said from behind me. I froze. "Weren't you waiting for the elevator? Get in." I turned back slowly, intentionally deepening my voice. "Thank you, Miss Sterling." She'd invited me in, but didn't move, simply fixing me with those cool, clear eyes. "You were one of the reporters today? I don't recall you asking any questions." I dropped my gaze. "Miss Sterling, I just graduated. I'm an intern, so I don't have questioning privileges." "I see," she said quietly, her expression unreadable. Beside her, Julian shot me a venomous look. "Emma, we should go? We're meeting Director Lowe for dinner." Emma finally looked away. I stood alone in the rising elevator, lost in thought. After my parents divorced, my father had taken Julian and married into the wealthy Vance family. For as long as I could remember, I'd hardly ever seen my half-brother. Then, 5 years ago, he suddenly showed up. "I'll give you $100,000. You pretend to be me and take care of someone." My mom had just died, leaving behind a mountain of medical debt. I had no choice but to say yes. It was only later I found out the person was Emma Sterling, the Sterling heiress and his fiancée, who had suffered a terrible accident right after their engagement. "She's blind, a family outcast. Who wants to babysit that?" he'd sneered. If it weren't for my public image, I'd have broken the engagement off ages ago. Julian's acting career was just taking off then. He was afraid of being seen as a heartless jerk, so he dumped the dirty work on me. Emma had lived a charmed life for 18 years before disaster struck, and her temper became vicious. In those early days, she would cut me down with the cruelest words, but I was being paid, so I took it without complaint. Until the day I visited my mother's grave and got back late. She laid into me again. "Julian, stop the act. You think I don't know you can't stand the sight of me? You're just scared of what people will say." She never finished, because I lunged forward and kissed her. It was my first kiss, clumsy and artless, fueled more by anger than passion, more of a desperate bite than anything else. But Emma fell silent, and I could feel the heat rising to the tips of her ears. A flicker of malice went through me. I bit her lip gently one more time before pulling back, my hands on her shoulders, my breath coming in ragged gasps. "Did you feel that? Do you still think I can't stand you?" I found Mark downstairs with the memory card. "Ethan, you're a hard worker. Hey, there's a dinner tonight. A good chance for you to network. I'll take you along. In this business, it's all about who you know." I thanked him profusely, but when we got to the restaurant, I saw a familiar black Rolls Royce parked out front and froze. "Miss Sterling is here tonight." Mark turned and winked. "The dinner I'm taking you to is with Ms. Sterling. Don't underestimate my connections, kid." It was too late to back out, so I steeled myself and went inside. Thankfully, it was a large private room, and junior reporters like me were seated far from Emma's table. Mark introduced me to several industry veterans, and as the rookie, I had to make the rounds with toasts. Eventually, feeling dizzy, I escaped to the restroom to splash some water on my face. When I stepped out, the hallway was dimly lit. A familiar silhouette stood in the shadows by a window. My heart hammered against my ribs. I took one step, and then Emma spoke from behind me, her low voice a tangled web of emotions as she said, syllable by syllable, "Ethan Knight." I stopped dead in my tracks. I swallowed hard, hearing her unhurried footsteps approach. I instinctively closed my eyes as her familiar scent drew closer, inch by inch. When I opened them, I was lost in the deep ocean of her gaze. I asked quietly, "How do you know my name?" She didn't answer right away, just studied me for a long moment. "Your mentor was introducing you to everyone. The whole room knows your name." Thinking of Mark's booming voice, my face flushed. "Sorry about that. He's just very supportive of the new hires, maybe a little too much so. If we disturbed you, Miss Sterling, I apologize." I chose my words carefully, not wanting to get Mark in trouble, but Emma said nothing. Under the warm light, she narrowed her eyes, a cryptic smile on her face. "You're still an intern, aren't you? I have a job opportunity for you." Interested, my head was still spinning when I got back to the table. Mark noticed my pale face. "What's wrong?" "Feeling sick." His eyes drifted down to the card in my hand, then widened in disbelief. Is that Emma Sterling's personal card?" I nodded. I thought back to our conversation. It was her private card, the one people said was impossible to get, with her direct line. I'd asked her warily, "Why would you give an opportunity like this to an unknown reporter?" She had replied with the faintest of smiles. "Let's just say, I like the look of you." That did sound exactly like something Emma would say. In the 2 years I knew her, once she'd gotten used to me, she would sometimes let her rebellious streak show. I snapped out of my reverie and mumbled some excuse to Mark. The next day at work, my editor called me into his office. "Ethan," he said cheerfully, "you know that hit reality show, Love in the Limelight? They want you on as a special guest commentator for a recording. Get ready." It was only after I got the brief that I realized the next episode's featured couple was Julian Vance and Emma Sterling. After the forum, News of their engagement was all over Twitter. From the depths of despair to the pinnacle of success, the headlines gushed. It was the perfect love story. Rumor had it that the Vance family's company had been on the verge of collapse, but with a massive infusion of capital from the Sterling Corporation, it was now flourishing. I closed the comments section. The host, Stella, was going over the schedule. "This episode is going to be ratings gold," she said. I gripped my pen tighter. I knew every single detail of those 2 years better than anyone on Earth, and I couldn't say a word about it. Julian had used the Sterling family's resources and connections to become an A-list movie star. The show began, and 1 million viewers flooded the live stream. Under the bright lights, I heard Stella begin. "So, we hear wedding plans are underway. Can you share a bit about your journey together?" Julian turned to Emma with a soft smile. "In my eyes, Emma has always been, and will always be, the one I love most." He gazed at her, his eyes practically overflowing with adoration. But Emma just laughed. "Liar. Have you forgotten how much you couldn't stand me right after I went blind?" Julian froze, his eyes darting towards me with a flash of malice. On camera, he had no choice but to force a smile. "I honestly don't remember that. I suppose as we grew closer, all I can recall are the good times." I glanced at the live comments scrolling on the monitor behind the cameras. The screen was flooded with "so sweet" and heart emojis. I set down my script, picked up my microphone, and addressed Emma. "It seems you two have differing recollections. Perhaps there's more to the story? Could you tell us how you managed to work through those initial difficulties?" I didn't expect her to answer, but after a moment of silence, she did. "When I first lost my sight, I was in a dark place. I hated the world. He was working constantly, but still had to take care of me in his spare moments. One day, he was completely overwhelmed. He had soup on the stove and ran downstairs to buy salt, but he forgot to turn off the burner. By the time he got back, the kitchen was on fire. A lump formed in my throat. I was back there, feeling the searing heat of the flames from that evening. I remember dragging Emma from her room, grabbing her by the collar and slapping her face, my voice and my entire body shaking as I screamed, "Are you trying to die?" She didn't fight back like she usually did. She was silent for a long time before asking in a raw, hoarse voice, "Wouldn't it be better if I did? Wouldn't that be a relief for you?" In that moment, I realized the proud, untouchable Sterling heiress was gone, replaced by a broken kitten, all bluff and no bite. Panting, I pushed her back into the room, the walls scorched black where the flames had licked them. I undid the buttons of her shirt, one by one. "I missed dinner because of this," I whispered. "You owe me." A gasp escaped her lips just as I crushed them with my own. "Emma, you're not a burden to me." That night, the world fell away, and it was just the two of us. But now, she was telling our story, and the man beside her, the supposed hero of that memory, was Julian. The whole world believed it was their memory. Her familiar scent seemed to drift across the stage, enveloping me, a scent that was no longer mine to claim. She paused, then continued, "I'll never forget the moonlight that night. It was so bright, you could see everything. I couldn't see it, of course, but he described it to me all night long. I crushed the papers in my hand, staring down at nothing, my eyes burning, because I'd gone off script and dug up details no one had ever heard. The interview was a massive success. By the end, viewership had broken 10 million. Everyone was buzzing about getting the first real glimpse into the Sterling heiress's hidden past. Backstage, Stella clapped me on the shoulder. "That's some real journalism, Ethan." Those questions were so sharp, she had no choice but to answer. Just then, I turned and saw Emma and Julian approaching. Emma's gaze was cool. "Were those your questions today?" I nodded. Julian gave me a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Mr. Knight, you certainly have a knack for hitting a nerve, but I'd advise you to remember your professional ethics." I said nothing, my eyes on Emma. Her expression was unreadable as she said coolly, "Mr. Knight is very capable. From now on, you'll be our primary media liaison." Julian's head snapped toward me, his eyes filled with undisguised fear and hatred. He cornered me later in an empty hallway, his eyes narrowed with suspicion and disgust. "Ethan, you're a greedy son of a bitch. You took my money. What the hell are you doing back here?" I met his gaze calmly. "I graduated. I came back to find a job. It's perfectly normal." "Do you think I'm an idiot?" he hissed, losing control. "You will quit this job immediately, or I'll make sure you never have another peaceful day in your life." I ignored him and walked away. Julian was true to his word. Suddenly, I was hitting roadblocks everywhere. Opportunities that should have been mine were given to someone else at the last minute. Then, just before the end of the day, my editor called me in. "Next month, we have the big annual development conference. You're going to host it." I was stunned, especially when she told me Ms. Sterling had personally requested me. After work, I saw the familiar Rolls-Royce parked across the street from my office. The window rolled down, revealing Emma's cool, impassive face. Mr. Knight, since you're so curious about my past, why don't you ask me about it directly? I looked down. I have no intention of prying, Miss Sterling. It was just for the job. I gave you my personal card. You could have called me. I pursed my lips. That wasn't necessary. In that moment, it hit me that this was 3 years later. She was Emma Sterling, the powerful CEO, not the volatile girl I once knew. To her, that past was probably a source of shame she never wanted to revisit. I turned to leave, but her voice stopped me. Wait. She stepped out of the car, blocking my path in one fluid motion. Ethan, we need to talk. A corner of her mouth lifted, and her eyes held a flicker of something that looked like resignation. Over the next few weeks, Emma met with me twice more to go over the key announcements for the conference. At the end of our last meeting, as if on an impulse, she handed me a folder. Here, you can announce this at the conference. Consider it an exclusive you broke yourself. I hesitated for a second before taking it. Thank you. When Mark found out, he urged me. It sounds like Ms. Sterling really values you. Maybe you should discreetly mention how Julian has been sabotaging you. I just smiled as I edited my script. There's no need. The day of the conference arrived, and the venue was packed. The center seat, reserved for Emma, was empty. Under the glare of the spotlights, I was announcing Sterling Corp's next major partnerships when a reporter I didn't recognize jumped to his feet. Where did you steal that confidential data? He shouted. My expression hardened. My collaboration with Sterling Corp is entirely legitimate. A guy like you who sleeps his way to the top has no right to talk about legitimacy, he yelled. And I have proof. Then, someone else walked onto the stage. It was Julian. He stared at me and sighed. Ethan, you reporters really are shameless. The large screen behind me suddenly switched from the presentation to a series of blurry photos. These photos show you knocking on your editor's hotel room door late at night, and security footage of the two of you checking in together. You're a predator. As the room erupted in chaos, the main doors opened. Emma walked in, her sharp eyes sweeping right past me. My heart sank. The spotlight felt like an executioner's beam, pinning me for my public humiliation as the crowd murmured angrily. He's a disgrace to our profession. He should be blacklisted. I ignored them all, my eyes fixed on Emma as she turned to Julian. What did you just say? Julian lowered his voice. Emma, he tricked you. He got close to you under the guise of an interview just to steal corporate secrets. He even slept his way into hosting this conference. Emma was silent for a moment, then her eyes found mine. Do you have anything to say for yourself? I could feel the hatred and triumph radiating from Julian's gaze, and the absurdity of it all hit me. He was my half-brother, only 2 years older. After our mother died, we should have been the only family each other had left in the world. A bitter, mocking smile touched my lips. I gripped the microphone. Ms. Sterling, your fiancé is spouting lies and slander. If you intend to stand by and let him twist the truth simply because you love him, I will report that fact in my coverage of this event. I doubt the public will trust projects led by a CEO with such questionable judgment. The rebellious girl I once knew, or the ruthless soul she had become, either one should have been enraged by such a blatant threat. But she simply walked onto the stage, step by step, until she stood across from me, meeting my gaze. And in a voice barely above a whisper, she said my name. Ethan. A sudden, sharp pain filled my chest. I turned my head away, speaking each word with precision. All of these accusations are false. My relationship with Ms. Sterling, Mr. Vance's fiancée, has been strictly professional. We have had no private contact. No contact. Emma's voice cut through my words. You gave me a ring. Don't you plan on taking responsibility for that? I froze, my head snapping back to face her. She raised her left hand, showing the simple silver ring on her finger. It was cheap. The craftsmanship was nothing special, but she had cared for it so well that it shone brilliantly in the stage lights. In an instant, that ring pulled me back 4 years. It was Emma's 19th birthday. For the first 18 years of her life, her birthdays had been extravagant galas. That year, she had nothing and no one but me. To cheer her up, I took a 2-day gig between classes and used the $40 I made to buy a pair of cheap matching rings. I took her hand and slipped it on her finger. She couldn't see, but I could feel the blush creeping up her neck. It's just something I found, Miss Sterling. Hope you don't mind. Don't call me that, she'd whispered, clutching the cheap ring to her chest. I love it, because it's from you. And she meant it. From that day on, she never took it off, not even in our most intimate moments. Snapping back to the present, I saw Emma closing the distance between us. Say something, Ethan. There's nothing to say, I muttered, clenching my fists. Miss Sterling, you're mistaken. Isn't that the engagement ring Mr. Vance gave you? She laughed. I never said who gave it to me. How would you know that? By then she was standing right in front of me, too close to escape. Whispers erupted from the audience. What is she saying? That the one who was with her back then was this reporter? Then what about Julian Vance? You know, Now that you mention it, they do look alike. Julian glared at me, his eyes burning with hate, but he forced a placating tone for Emma. Emma, don't let him fool you. The man is a pathological liar. He has a history of this. I closed my eyes, forcing down the storm of emotion inside me. When I opened them, my voice was steady. Yes, I gave it to her. I was paid to impersonate Julian and deceive you for 2 years. Then I took the money and left. I've forgotten all about it. You always thought it was him, and now you're engaged to him. What's the point of dredging this up now? I couldn't say another word. I swallowed the lump in my throat, set down the microphone, and turned to leave. But in that instant, her hand closed around my wrist. The familiar heat of her palms spread through me as she whispered, "You told me that as long as I wore this ring, you'd recognize me anywhere. Does that still hold true?" A tremor went through me. I looked down, slowly prying her fingers from my wrist until I was free. When I looked up again, my face was a mask of indifference. I forgot. I was lying. During my years studying abroad, I thought of Emma constantly. That winter, just before her 19th birthday, right before she was taken back by her family, we were at our peak. The air in that northern city was so dry that winter. Sometimes a spark of static would crackle between our lips when we kissed, a tiny, pleasant sting. I thought about telling her the truth more than once. But in our most passionate moments, she would whisper against my skin, her voice thick with emotion, "Julian, don't ever leave me." And I would realize that our entire relationship was built on a lie. She despised deception more than anything. If she knew the truth, she would hate me to her very core. Shortly before Emma's 20th birthday, her grandfather, the patriarch of the Sterling family, fell gravely ill. He learned the truth of what had happened, that Emma had been framed, that even her accident had been orchestrated. He sent his people to contact Julian, telling him to bring Emma home. Julian showed up at my door. He was a rising star by then, and he looked down his nose at me. "The Sterlings are taking her back. You're not actually delusional enough to think you have a future with her, are you?" To them, to her, I'm the only one they'll ever acknowledge. You were always just a cheap knockoff. He pulled a check from his wallet and threw it at me. "Here's another 100 grand. Stop dreaming." I looked up at him, my voice low. "Julian, my mother was your mother too." He scoffed. "My mother is a Vance." What was she? A whore. As the sun set, I lost it. I grabbed Julian by the collar and punched him twice, hard. He screamed, and his men rushed in, twisting my arms behind my back and forcing me to the floor. The glamorous movie star stood over me. "Take the money and disappear. Go abroad and don't ever come back. If you do, I'll have every ugly rumor about her carved on her headstone." He left. I stared at the check lying on the floor. I thought about 2 years prior, when my mom was sick, the debts piling up. After she died, I couldn't even afford a proper burial plot for her. And that's when Julian had called. $100,000. All you have to do is pretend to be me and take care of someone. The press conference had devolved into a circus. Reporters turned their mics and cameras on Julian. "Mr. Vance, is what Miss Sterling said true? Was it really Mr. Knight, not you, who was with her all that time?" He was speechless, turning pleadingly to Emma. "Emma, you know me. I was with you for years. How could you say this?" Emma looked down at him from the stage and smiled. "Don't be afraid. You said you had irrefutable proof, didn't you? My lawyers are here. Everything that's happened today will be documented and entered into evidence." Her voice was soft, but Julian began to tremble as if he'd seen a ghost. The conference was clearly over. I gathered my things to leave the stage, and Emma fell into step behind me. "It's raining," she said quietly. "Let me give you a ride." I thought about it for 3 seconds, then decided not to punish myself and got into her Rolls Royce. I glanced over at her and saw a flicker of secret happiness in her eyes. When I pulled out my phone, I saw the whole fiasco from the conference was already trending on Twitter. A knot formed in my stomach. I quickly locked my phone and stared out at the rain streaking down the window. The New York skyline hadn't changed in 3 years, but between Emma and me, the world had turned upside down. Back then, the Sterlings had flown in the best surgeons in the world, and after the operation, Emma could finally see again. Julian had hired men to watch me around the clock, making sure I couldn't get anywhere near her. They brought me to the hospital. I stood outside her room, unable to see her, but I could hear the fear in her voice. "Julian, I'm here," my brother said softly. "I'm so scared," she whispered. "When I open my eyes, I want you to be the first person I see." I didn't stay to hear the rest. A pain so sharp it nearly buckled my knees shot through me. In her world, the person who had been by her side for 2 years was Julian Vance. His bodyguards dragged me into an empty waiting room. "Someone like you will never, ever get near her again." Her familiar scent, so close now, pulled me back to the present. Suddenly, I couldn't take it anymore. I pushed away from her. "What am I supposed to call you? The great heiress? Julian Vance's fiancée? Those 2 years are over, Emma. The man you were engaged to was always him." Your life is back on track. So why are you dragging me back into it? But that's not my life, she said, her eyes turning red. I had never even met Julian before all this. The only person I ever knew was you. A sharp pain twisted in my gut. I closed my eyes. I was right outside your hospital room. I heard you. You accepted him. You hugged him. You kissed him. No, she cut me off. The second I opened my eyes, I knew it wasn't you. I stared at her, stunned. Her voice lost its composure. The Sterling family is complicated, Ethan. That hospital room was full of people who wanted me dead, including my own mother. When I realized he wasn't you, I had to play along to survive. I'm not afraid of dying. When my cousin went crazy and stabbed me after a failed takeover, it barely hurt. But in that moment, when I knew you were gone, I just missed you so much. In the quiet of the parking garage, under the dim glow of the car's interior lights, she shrugged off her jacket. She unbuttoned her blouse, revealing a pale scar on her chest, just over her heart. The Sterling family is a snake pit. Power isn't won easily. After today, Julian and the board members who backed him will be finished, and the entire Sterling empire, including me, can be yours. She leaned closer, her face inches from mine. The eyes that had once been clouded and unfocused now shone with the light of 1,000 stars. Her darkest days had also been the most desperate and uncertain years of my own life. All that raw, untamed emotion had forged an unbreakable bond between us. As she closed the last bit of distance, she sighed, a soft, breathy sound. Her warm hand slid to my waist. They were all such fools. That obedient, docile man they saw. That could never have been you. No one could ever fake being you. By the time the storm passed, it was late. Emma pulled up to a house in the suburbs. I checked my phone and saw the top trending story on Twitter, marked with a blazing red alert. Julian Vance detained for questioning. Emma said, I came back to destroy the Vance family. To destroy Julian. And to clear my mother's name from the lies the Vances told about her 20 years ago. I was willing to do whatever it took. 20 years ago, the young heiress of the Vance family wanted my father, so she framed my mother, spreading vicious rumors that she was a prostitute. And Julian, just a boy, helped them do it. Also, he could live a life of luxury. He threw his own mother to the wolves. My mother was arrested, held for 15 days, and lost her job. All our neighbors whispered behind her back. After the divorce, she took me, and we moved back to her small hometown in disgrace. She fell into a deep depression and died of illness just after her 40th birthday. The day she died, the news was on the hospital TV, doing a feature on the Vance family. They called them a model family, loving parents, brilliant son. My mother weighed less than 100 pounds, her hands bruised from 4 needles. What right did they have to be happy? So, yes, Emma finished. I used you. I covered my eyes, fighting back the tears. Don't be sorry. If you used me, I'm glad. It means I meant something to you. Of course I'm on your side. I told you, she said softly. The Sterling empire, including me, it's all yours. The scandal dominated Twitter for 3 days straight. The Vances, desperate to kill the story, came to Emma for help. She listened to their pleas from behind her desk and smiled sweetly. I'm sorry, but that's a decision for my fiancé to make. I turned to them with a polite smile. I suggest you both get your affairs in order, because you'll be joining him very soon. Emma held another press conference to clarify her relationship with Julian. When asked, she smiled brightly. My fiancé? I never said it was him. I was always referring to the man who was by my side and took care of me when I had nothing. Riding the wave of public interest, I went live on Instagram and told millions of viewers the entire truth about what happened 20 years ago. That live stream was the final nail in the Vance family's coffin. Their fortune was built on dirty secrets, and now they were finally paying the price. It was never Sterling Corp funding them directly, Emma explained. It was my half-brother, on his own initiative. Our companies had a few joint ventures, but we've already divested. There's no risk to Sterling. That was a relief. I took the evidence I had been gathering for years and turned it all over to the police. Because Emma had been so thorough in cutting ties with them after she took over, she wasn't implicated in the fallout. The Vance family was ruined. That day, I brought a bouquet of flowers and took Emma to the cemetery to visit my mother. In the photo on her headstone, her smile was warm, but tinged with a deep sadness. She was a kind, gentle woman, and the world had made her suffer for it. On her deathbed, she'd squeezed my hand and told me not to hate Julian. He's not their real son, she'd said. Life must be very hard for him there. She never knew that for all those years, Julian had secured his place in the Vance family by slandering and shaming her. I traced her picture on the cold stone. Mom, it's over. No one will ever speak ill of you again. I'm doing well now. And I have a girlfriend. From beside me, Emma quietly corrected, Fiancée. Right, Fiancée. I twisted the silver ring on my finger. When I looked up, Emma was staring at the headstone. Ethan, could you wait for me in the car? I'd like to speak with your mother alone for a moment. The autumn air was chilly. I waited in the car for a long time before Emma returned. She started the engine, and we drove in silence for a while before she spoke. I thanked her, she said, for bringing you into this world. If she hadn't, I would have died in that miserable summer 5 years ago. That night, she told me she had a surprise waiting for me at her place. I opened the door to her bedroom. The room was steamy and warm, and through the haze, I saw her propped up on the bed, watching me like a cat, her gaze a liquid caress. Ethan, she purred, you've been neglecting me. I stared at her for a long time, until the tips of her ears flushed pink. My voice was rough from the long day. I'm going to take a shower first. Emma was obedient. When I came out, toweling my hair dry, she had set the scene. The only light came from a single aromatherapy lamp, its fragrant smoke curling around her as she watched me with heavy-lidded eyes. You're tense, I murmured, kissing the corner of her eye. As our limbs and gazes tangled, there was nothing but the raw, restrained passion we had held back for so long. When we finally stilled, the first light of dawn was breaking. We held each other close, and she whispered a promise against my skin. Ethan Knight, I will always protect you.